Pat stared at the bill, a storm building in his eyes. It should have only cost $50, a pitiful amount for his pitiful meal. Welcome to USA Stories channel. Do not forget to subscribe and activate the bell button to receive all new updates. Now let's go to the story. He was a struggling veteran, not just any diner, and the faculty members who had paid for this dinner had obviously underestimated him. This ridiculous bill was exploitation as much as an insult. Although he was filled with rage, years of adversity had sharpened his resolve. "Is there a reason for this charge?" he asked the waitress coolly, refusing to pay the outrageous amount. "Sir, you disregarded our orders and policies on several occasions. This is the result," she answered. Pat felt a surprising calmness as rage battled him. "This wasn't what I expected. It's sitting outside my trunk. All I need is some cash. If you want, you can observe me." The waitress rolled her eyes dismissively, but she didn't say anything. Pat felt her watchful but uncertain stare scorching into him through the window. He reached his trunk, grinned mischievously, and retrieved his duffel bag. A quick look back to the restaurant showed that the waitress's once vigilant eyes were now somewhat worried. They left him with no option, even though he didn't want to do this. He cleared his throat and walked in, the waitress's irritation giving way to a hint of discomfort. Her heart stopped when he opened his bag and showed her what was inside. Even on mornings when the sun was shining, Pat Abner felt like he had the entire world on his shoulders. There was no apparent reason to get up. A pain as new as yesterday gnawed at his heart. Trauma had been weaved throughout his life like a tapestry, but one incident left a huge hole in his spirit. He didn't completely understand the political minefield of Vietnam War when he enlisted in it as a result of patriotism in his early 20s. After coming back home, he married Joanna after finding comfort in her affection. Although life flourished, destiny had different ideas. Raising his twin boys who have different personalities was his whole focus. Derek, his spirit of adventure, dreamed of greater things, while Joanna, his wife's shadow, delighted in her culinary skills. This flashback was only the start of Pat's tale, a tale of sorrow, atonement, and the lasting influence of family. A captivating tale that will leave you speechless was just waiting to be revealed. Pat didn't realize that his boys had grown into young men as the years passed by. John, who has always been outgoing, decided to take the lead and pursue a career in hospitality. Quieter and more contemplative, Derek stayed for a further year before making a decision that would change his life. As the Iraq War continued, Derek declared he would enlist because of his undying patriotism. Pat made an effort to talk sense to his son and to convey to him the painful truths of war that were ingrained in his own being, but Derek was unmoved. Pat and Joanna were left feeling paralyzed by their son's march off to service. They had to endure a torturous wait every day until a handwritten letter one fateful day upended their entire lives. Derek was lost, slain in combat. Joanna was engulfed by grief, which further submerged her in sadness. Their marriage suddenly collapsed as their once unbreakable love broke. Pat left his wife alone after becoming insensitive to her suffering. He took just 2 priceless mementos from her, a fading picture and Derek's old baseball cap, which he stole from his bed before heading out on a lonely trail. Pat became a nomad for 20 years, moving about and taking on various occupations to make ends meet. Even though he had lost a lot, those 2 shattered pieces of his son continued to be wholly quiet travelers with him. He became curious about tales about a new eatery one typical day in New York. He entered, looking for some warmth and smells he was acquainted with. The perfume of boiling spices brought back memories of Joanna's cooking. However, his relief was fleeting. The air was cut by a shrill voice that said, "Can I get you anything to drink?" It was the waitress, with an air as icy as the ice in her drink. Her smile faded as Pat lowered the menu to see his face, leaving a spark of uneasiness in its place. He felt that he had unintentionally set off something, but what? Before he could inquire, the now angry server said, "Sir, you can't wear a hat inside, it's policy." Though years of struggle had sharpened Pat's control, anger still burned inside him. "It holds significance for me," he said, indicating the headgear. "It belonged to my son." Her curt response, "It doesn't matter who it was," cut off his comments. Rules are rules. Pat met her eyes with steely resolve, refusing to back away. "Then I won't take it off." Pat wondered whether he had gone too far as the waitress walked off with a sneer. But his voyage had only just begun, and the meeting was far from done. When the waitress reappeared, she was carrying a platter full of food that appeared to be a doorway to her house. Every taste was a cozy hug, a lost tune drifting across his tongue. Tears began to well up, but Pat sucked them down and kept his cool. A shudder went through him as he grabbed for the bill. $1,300. His blood became icy. He had only eaten a basic dinner rather than indulging in luxury. This wasn't a bill, rather it was a penalty and a misinterpreted statement from faculty members who didn't regard him as anything more than a needy old man begging for leftovers. Years of suffering kept the rage simmering under the surface. They misjudged him. Not just any old man either. Underneath this serene exterior were battle wounds on the inside and outside. He concentrated on the unfairness, pushing away the memories that were gnawing at the corners of his consciousness. This was now a matter of principle rather than hunger. Bullies wouldn't target him. A thought quickly and craftily came to him. It wouldn't occur to the waitress, and by the time it did, it would be too late. His eyes darted throughout the space, finding her resting against a wall and giggling with a coworker. Their blind laughter will eventually give way to remorse. As he gestured for her to come closer, her arrogant smile became wider. "Why is there a fee?" She winked, anticipating a simple explanation. He said, "Exercising my rights," in a chilly tone. "But apparently that comes at a price in this establishment." Her mouth twitched with a grin. "Sir, you were informed of the policy." "And I said no," he said, his eyes unblinking. "Leave me simply get my wallet for some cash now. It's right outside." Her expression wavered between shock and distrust. Pat relished it. Their roles will soon be switched. He could feel her scrutiny as he walked out the window. With an impish twinkle in his eye, he reached for his trunk and popped it open. He grabbed his duffel bag, the eatery suddenly appearing as a large shadow in the mirror. The waitress's smile had faded to a deepening look of fear. He opened the bag and took out a recognizable Polaroid picture instead of cash. He turned back toward the restaurant, ready to unleash his scheme, and the air crackled with expectation. The aged Polaroid quivered in his grasp, the picture distorted by his tears. With a voice stifled with passion, he croaked, "Know who this is?" His son Derek was there, caught in a carefree smile. "Died for this nation and fought for it. Do you believe he would be grateful for the greeting you've given me?" He was not finished. Clutching the battered baseball cap, he rasped, "This hat is the only piece of him left, and for that reason, it never goes away." The waitress gaped as his tirade came to an end. She stammered, "Getting the owner," and hurried away. Pat reclined, a cunning grin flashing over his lips. This little cafe had a secret that even the waitress was unaware of. John kept numerous hats, including manager, chief chef, and owner, all driven by the realization of a 20-year ambition. The waitress leveled an allegation directly at him. "There, causing trouble," she growled. But there was still no difficulty. John's expression turned to recognition, his voice brimming with incredulity. "Dad," he hurried forward, whispering. Pat, an elderly guy, has maintained a low profile while supporting his son's business, never making his presence known. Years of unsaid words melting away as they clasped. But Pat had to let it out. "I paid $1,300 to that waitress for a hat. Absurd," he raged. John's gaze grew strained. "Which policy? We don't possess one." The waitress's act unraveled when she began to stutter. She had created fictitious regulations to take advantage of people's weaknesses. Anger flared in John's eyes. His voice low and menacing, he tore off her apron. "Get out, now!" Shocked, the waitress walked out, leaving the broken remnants of her deceit behind. John turned to face his father, whom he had lost, and spoke something Pat had never heard before. "I've missed you, Dad. Derek, you need to come home. We are aware of your situation. There's a spare room available, and you must greet the family." Pat held to his kid, tears running down his cheeks. He had at last discovered his real home and was no longer alone. Pat and John's reconnection was a comfort to their respective spirits. Pat felt a wave of tranquility sweep over her as they sat sharing memories over warm mugs of coffee. Not just physically, but also in his family's hearts, he was at home. Their lives had been altered by this accidental meeting, which was brought about by a misunderstanding and a Polaroid. Pat became a well-liked regular at the restaurant years later. His wartime tales and life teachings enthralled patrons, adding a unique touch to the restaurant's allure. John was motivated by his father's tenacity, grew the company, and opened stores all throughout the city. However, the biggest shift occurred within of them. Pat was able to release the guilt that had been weighing on him for so long by forgiving others. John finally realized how painful his father was, and he saw how powerful empathy and compassion can be. But their tale is much more than simply a father and son getting back together. It is evidence of the continuing strength of family, the reconciling power of forgiveness, and the surprising detours that life may take. It serves as a reminder that hope may linger and reignite even in the darkest of circumstances. Please remember to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos. If you enjoyed the tale, the next video that plays on your screen will probably move you too.